This tutorial will go into more detail in how you can use frames and auto layout in Figma. Um, Frames and auto layout are very powerful features that are key to understanding Figma. So that's why I wanted to provide some examples on how you can use it. So basically what they do is they help you create dynamic and responsive designs by automatically adjusting and aligning elements according to certain rules. So it's really, really useful. So why is auto layout important? Uh, Considering the dynamic and fluid nature of the media, where the content has the potential to be updated quite often or tested constantly, so auto layout makes it easier to make the content adaptable um, and consistent. So that will make that's make a big difference there when we design an app or a website. It makes a big difference there how quickly we do it. So what I'm going to do now is to share the instance where I find it particularly useful. You may find other ways to use this feature, but this is the way I use it and where I find it really, really useful. Okay. So, and depending on your background and the programs that you typically use, the concept of frame and auto layout may take some time to get used to, especially if you're a designer who is whose formats are more static with specific dimensions, specific content, like an A3 poster, for example, or a brochure. So you work around specific settings. Sometimes the concept of frame and auto layout, which is very dynamic, it may take some time to get used to. So that's why I decided to just provide these examples to see if you find better ways to do it. So what are the instances that I normally use it? So what I'm going to share with you today is, for example, a button where maybe the content of the button may change depending of what is used for. Uh, a preview card like this one, where maybe the text may be different from every card box, and overall layout page, and how you can use in here, so where, for example, the height of the page can change based on the content, and how to make it responsive. So okay, so we're gonna start with the button, okay, which is one of the most basic ways to use frame. Okay. So if you create a button, and I'm going to create a button from scratch, okay. So so what I'm going to do is to obviously, create a square like you normally will do. You may want to add radius to it here, or using this instance in here. You may want to change the color, and I'm going to add some stroke as well. Okay, so this is the button. Now I'm going to just add the text, right? So what I'm going to do is to obviously add some text to it, just easy, very basic. I'm sure you know all this by now. So I'm going to adjust the size, kind of align the elements a little bit. Yeah, okay. So you see in the layers, it's just two layers, one bottom from the rectangle. Nothing exciting or new about that. I always recommend, instead of grouping, if you want to group the elements on the page, use frame instead. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to right click and frame selection. Okay, so the auto layout is something that you can add to a frame, and frames can be nested like this. In this case, for example, we have the page which is called hug the content, and I just call this one bottom, and So they can be frames inside frames, completely fine. That's how you will use it. So if I want to create an arrow layout to this specific frame, so I just tick here, or you can either use add auto layout right here, or you can just use this icon that you automatically add it. Okay, so far we haven't done anything really special, but that will go into each example or each instance that I'm going to show you actually kind of elaborates on the uses of these settings. For example, auto layout, what it does is calculate the width of the height. We will go into more detail with this in the next example. But if I want the text or the button to adapt to the content of the text, instead of fixed width, we can say hug context. Hug context means that the frame will adjust to the content. So what is going to happen here is that if I change the text to whatever text, the box will adjust it. So that's quite handy, because otherwise you may have to actually readjust and resize the bottom every time you change the text. So that is very useful. Okay, so that's one of the instances where I constantly use this. Another is, let's say, for example, that I want to do a preview card. So we select these elements, or we can add, let's say that I want a little bit like a border, like this one, right? And so I'm going to scroll away and scroll in again. Okay, so again, this is the frame called mobile, which is the page. And then I have all these elements. Another way to create a frame, if you tick here in layout and make an auto layout, you're automatically grouping it. You're automatically creating the auto layout. But I'm going to do it the way that I normally do, which is I'm going to create a box, a rectangle, and I'm going to drag it at the bottom. I'm going to change the color to white. I'm going to add a stroke, soft gray or whatever. Yep, so okay. So now I'm going to select all these elements, this the content of the page in this case, and add auto layout. Okay, so yeah, just one of the good things about a layout is that then I can change, how I previously selected width to hug the contents. I prefer the box to be constant, like the width to be 336 pixels, but I want the height to adapt to the text. So as soon as I select hug, you see how the element actually adapted to the content. So that means that if I add more text, it's just going to expand and reduce, etc. So and that actually make it so much easier. And let's say, for example, that I I want to add a button. So I'm going to select the button that I already created. I'm going to select the frame. I'm going to call it maybe card or box. Then I want to make sure to insert the button inside the card. So I select the card layer, like right here at the left, and then I press it, and as you can see, it adjusts. So you can add and remove elements and it will adjust itself, which is quite handy. Another thing that I can see here, okay, I can adjust the spaces between elements. I think we have seen, maybe you already noticed that. So you can just consistently adjust the spaces. And this is another way to say, okay, I want the elements to be aligned to the left or to the right. Let's say the left. The spaces inside, like this refers to the space inside the box. Like for example, if I select the card, go to auto layout, I can just, I may actually say better here. So those are the ways that you can do it. You can also, if I tick here, you can actually individual add the padding different for every instance. So that will be up to you. Okay, so let's see with the card. Okay, so okay, we created the card. Okay, but I want also, and normally what I do is to select the page, the mobile page, which is already the main frame. If I change, when you create a frame, it doesn't have auto layout automatically, so you have to add it. If I select mobile and I said auto layout, I want also the height of the page to adjust to the content. You know how sometimes you can have a page that contains a lot of elements, so you need to scroll. So I don't want to resize the page every time I add an element. So I just select hot contents. And in what auto layout does is to adjust the spaces around based on what you already created. So I kind of have an estimation that you can adapt. Then, okay, this is interesting. This will actually demonstrate this direction that is here, okay? Let's say, for example, that I want to add more than one box, like this one, okay? So I'm going to duplicate this. So copy and paste or duplicate. You can just, what happened here is that it just duplicated next to each other, because what I want to do, but I don't want that. I want to add, to duplicate on top of each other. If I select mobile, like the page itself, and I change the direction, you see how it says right? So if I do this, it will automatically add the elements and it adjust the size of the page. So that makes it a little bit much easier, and you can adjust the text and it will automatically adjust the size as well. And if I want to add something like a header, I'm going to quickly something, and in here on this page at the very top, for example, I can just in this case, let's say that I want to add like a hero element, and so you see how it's not letting me extend it completely, and that's because the padding. If I want to take all the space, I just remove to 0. Say I want the elements to be aligned to the center, and then I may say, I may expand it. I can also say I want the top to be 0 and the bottom to have some kind of margin as well. So okay, let's say that I want to create briefly something like this. I'm not going to add all of this. I'm just going to add a text, like it's going to call hero, right? So if I just add the text, and that can cause some frustration or confusion, if I just add the text, what is happening is that I'm going to change the size. Is you see how we added the text after the rectangle? It doesn't let me to make the text on top of the rectangle, because in the mobile version, in the mobile page, it says to every element have a vertical layout. So it will automatically add elements on top of each other. So I don't really want that. I want the hero panel to be here. So that's when you use another nested frame. So I can take this rectangle, frame selection, and maybe add the text, because by adding a nested frame, it just, you are kind of starting creating another another frame, and you are interrupting the hierarchy that is being set in here. So I can add another one, auto layout, and you can just align, maybe if I have, say 15, so you can see how you can align it as well. So yeah, so that's basically how you can start adding elements without having to resize everything at the same time. So that's quite, that could be quite handy. So let's say, for example, now that we want to move this to the desktop version. Okay, so okay, I'm going to create a new frame, and I'm going to tick here, and it's going to select, I'm going to select this, the smallest one, MacBook Air. Put it in here. Okay, let's say that I want to start adjusting this mobile version to the desktop version. I am going to start to add an auto layout, and the height to be hot contents. It's not going to do anything now, but I want basically to have to do the same thing, like adjusting to the elements that are here. So I'm going to start working on the hero panel, right? I'm going to copy the hero panel. I'm going to go to the MacBook Air. And I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so you see how we adjusted the height. And there is something that what I also want to do, I want the hero panel to actually take all this space. So in that case, you select width and you select fill container. Fill container is the opposite. So basically it will adjust to the container. Then I want to add all these elements, but before moving these elements, right, I'm going to copy all of them, and then I'm selecting, and then I'm pasting. So the reason why it's looking all weird is because the direction that I have in the arrow layout of the page is horizontal. So I'm going to say, no, I want it vertical. So that way it will automatically adjust these elements as vertical. But I do not want this either. I want this to look a little bit like this. To do that, I'm going to select all the boxes, and as I say here, and I'm going to select, group them into a frame, and another frame. I can just go to auto layout automatically. So select all these elements, get out of layout, and then I can say the same, that the width will be fill container. Okay. What I have to do here is to kind of change the direction to see, instead of stacking them vertically, I want them to do it horizontally. I mean, this is better, okay, but this is not exactly what I want, because what I really want is to break it into two lines. And that's why this one is for. This one is called wrap. What it does is to just adding them next to each other until they reach the end, and then the next one will go automatically to the second line. Then I can align it to the center, depending on how I want. If I align it to the center and I only have 5, it will center it as well. So it's quite a nice touch. So the cool thing about doing like this is that if you notice, if you are working for any format, it will adjust automatically. So using frame is really, really handy, and it makes everything so much easier as well. One of the things also when you use auto layout is that something to keep in mind is that the order of the layers inside the frame, like in this case is card, image, text, etc., it will mirror the order that you see in the preview area. So for example, if I decide to bring this to the top, it will mirror this change on the visual area. That's just the way it is. So yeah, that could be quite useful. One of the things also like that I have encountered is like, okay, I have this card here, but what happens if I want the distance between these elements to be different? Like for example, I would love a little bit more space between the image and the text. I want it to be different. I mean, you can always remove the auto layout, but you may not want that because then you lose the synchronization that you have with the rest of the elements. So what I normally do, if I want something like that, what I do is to create another nested frame, like select these these 4 elements, and create another auto layout. And that actually creates lets you control this group individually, this group. So that way, if I select the card, I can adjust it, make it a little bit larger, and maybe even if I want this image to take up the entire space, now you can modify them independently, which can be handy. At least I have had this situation. And then 0, and then maybe I want 0, I want 0, and I'm going to extend this to be like that. So that way I can independently modify them as I wish or as required. So basically these are the most common situations, and the most common uses that I think frame. And I always say, even if you don't add auto layout, just frame it. It's better than using groups anyway, in terms of that there is so much more potential. So I hope this helped clarify on what frame is for and what auto layout is for. But that's the whole exercise that I had for you. So yep, so this is it for me. Hopefully this helped. And bye now.